We took down a ProQuest on Florian, so I wanted to post the list that I played, my testing data, and basically everything that went into the prep for this deck, the reason why I picked it, and then an overall recap. So going into testing, it was a little unorthodox because I have been doing a lot of Verdant's deck building and competing over the past like 6 months. I was playing her before she was even considered remotely playable. And so it's kind of weird because a lot of the high level players' opinions right now is that Verdant's is disputably like best deck in format and clearly stronger than Florian. So it was a little bit weird that I ended up on Florian for the PQ season. What happened was that during initial testing after the BNR, I figured that with the ban of Plume and then the unban of Germinate, that I thought that Florian had an edge in terms of overall matchup spread. While having Crown of Providence is obviously very strong, I do think that hearing some of the discourse around it, I think kind of left out a few key notes about how strong that equipment was for a lot of different matchup spreads. It meant that you didn't always need to second cycle HPOC combo people. It meant that into aggro, you were able to apply disruption more frequently by recurring like a copy of Felling. Whenever you would otherwise brick on a hand, you could convert 2 cards and basically get like a 2-card 11 out of the headpiece. I just think that the Plume was actually like really important for a lot of what that deck could do. You were able to play Rampant into a lot of matchups that I would argue, can no longer play, just because you got the access to playing one in the early game and then always having it in bin. And then your Plume was basically just a toolbox for whatever like card you needed to win the matchup, whether it was an arcane spell, whether it was the Rampant, whether it was disruption like Felling. I just think that Plume like glued together so much of the deck when it needed like certain pockets to win the game. I do agree though overall that I think Verdant's is an incredibly strong deck, and I could very easily see that maybe she is probably a better pick than Florian. It was just that was the initial testing, and it seemed like a lot of decks that we were testing with were just losing to Germinate plus Everbloom. Just having Germinate back just meant you were getting these insanely above rate all blue hands in the second cycle, or it would entirely dictate how your deck played. We'll have that today in the matchup spread, where there's just certain matchups where your win con is just you're going to block with every single card, play Germinate, and do nothing all game, but it's just almost deterministically 100% for you. So I was really leaning towards Florian, and we'll go ahead and look at the data. This is mainly internal testing. There is some like random Talishar queues on here, but for the most part, this was all group testing. We put in a lot of reps on this deck. But you can kind of see the overall matchup spread here. There's some really interesting outliers. I was finding that actually Syndra was a very manageable matchup. We'll get into it a little bit more, but overall, I think that your armor suite is actually very good into her. Gravy was a little bit difficult. A lot of this is trying to pin down how to actually play the matchup, and I still don't really think I have it 100% locked in. I will talk about that more, but I think it has to do mainly with how the other Gravy is playing. KO I thought was pretty favored for you. Depends on if they're like doing really careful like pitch stacking or if they're setting up cast bones into Reckless. If they're doing that, then you usually would lose the matchup. Acilio did feel definitely on the unfavored end, but the interesting thing here was I actually felt like Verdant's was actually very favored for Florian. And overall, I just think that the matchup spread to like everything else in the field is just really good. So the way that I kind of viewed it was that I think that the rest of the top meta, I think that Florian was doing fine into. I think you can beat Syndra very easily. I think that depending on your game plan into Gravy and a little bit of variance, I think that you can beat Gravy, and I think that your Verdant's matchup is actually good. And if there's anything that's hanging out into like the tier 1.5 to tier 2 range, that's like KO and Warrior, these other decks that are popping up on the weekly spreads, I think that you beat these decks really easily. So that was kind of how I ended up on Florian. We're going to run through the list today. In terms of deck composition, we're on 27 blues. I've seen some lists go down to 24. I've seen be up on 30. I think overall, a lot of this deck now actually revolves around CMH. And so I think that you actually need a higher blue count just so that you can have 2 flow counters on CMH. You get 3 total turns with this online, because the first turn you play it, you need a blue, but then you need 2 blues on the second hand, 2 earth blues specifically, so that you can like pitch grass, play Felling, or play something else. And so a lot of our deck is pretty homogenized around these like blue earth cards. And so I'm on 27. We're not playing things like Condemn. We're playing things like Flourish. I think that this still converts fine. This is a blue 2 with Go again, depending on what you're playing. But that was the overall choice in terms of blues. Everything else here is everything you've seen before. Nothing new here. We're on the 2 copies of Tillium. We're not on 3. I'm opting to play a yellow Carapace just to kind of hope to get that first decomp really early. Felling, for anyone who's unfamiliar with how this deck plays, I would say that the two main ways that this deck wins is a combination of Felling, Faceberg, and then matchup dependent Exterminate. Felling is the most broken card in the deck. I think it's the only reason that decks like Verdance, Florian, and Jarl can win games. This card is insanely above rate, and it's very important that you have your initial decomp done, so that way you always get the +4 on this. If you have to play this for 4, I still think it's insane. But you really should be playing this for 8. If it's in your arsenal and you don't have your first decompose done, it's normally okay to wait as long as you can to play it. Like you can just keep on blocking or, playing your 1-card hand or whatever, and just holding this in arsenal until you get the decomp if you can, right? It's just really good when it comes in for 8. And so we're on the 4 copies of Carapace. I just really want to make sure I'm getting that initial decomp done before I play my Felling. Same deal with Plow. Everything else here is really stock standard stuff. The only thing maybe we're talking about in the blue slot is just the blue package being on a lot of Earth cards, but we did talk about that already in terms of just keeping CMH on the table for multiple turns. Flourish was my choice as a non-attack, right? The synergizes with Barkskin, synergizes with Faceberg, and it's a blue Earth card. If you're forced to convert this, it works with a lot of your things. It works with E-Strike, it works with Felling, Plow, Swarming, Tilling, it works with CMH. So a lot of time you're going to be able to convert this for the +2 damage. Trot Along is in here. For those who are new to the deck, this works really well with your Reaping Blade. You can send this and the Reaping Blade will get go again. So if you ever force this to play 4 cards, you can play Trot Along, swing your Reaping Blade, send another attack. It also works with something like Plow, because Plow's base is 2, even though it gets a +4 after like the effect is applied. So the base, it does count towards Trot Along. So you could do something like Trot Along, Plow into like Felling on a 5-card hand, right? So it definitely is very powerful. When we go into the sideboard, this is where things kind of break down a little bit. This is very teched for Gravy, and it's very teched for Syndra and Verdance. What happened was that in testing, we were trying to figure out what to do for the Gravy matchup, and it really did seem like playing stuff like CMH into Outed and Rune Rager Swarm was very strong. Outed is a card maybe people don't really even know exists. This is just like a weird hunted card that just is unconditional go again at the cost of being a non-block. But it's a head jab, right? It's a head jab, and this synergizes with CMH. If you play CMH and you send Outed, that's a 6 with go again. Very good stuff. You want to play this into Gravy because this is what lets you keep up with their like constraining action point economy. So the problem with this deck, right, is that like Gravy plays an ally and you only have 1 action point to answer something. So you need these like go again cards that just clear the allies off the table to maintain like the board state. But then also these have the flexibility of going face. So if the Gravy is super low, you can just start ignoring allies, have your CMH out, and start playing your Outeds and going straight to the dome. What this ended up translating into was that the Verdance matchup felt like that if you were playing this really slow game, we've seen a lot of stuff with like AB6, we've seen like Reaping Play plus like Deny Redemption, like a bunch of weird different stuff. And these are like level 2 and 3 strategies when you go past like the first steps of how to play the matchup. Like these like really weird like niche ways to deal with the deck. What ended up working really well was just going face. If you can just kill the Verdance first cycle, the issue is that losing Plume means that they have to pitch stack their rampant turn. They don't really get the luxury of like setting pots and then just having 1 rampant in arsenal and then having 1 in the grave that they can just plume back whenever. They kind of actually have to pitch stack it in the second cycle, which means that if you kill them in first cycle, it was just way more effective. So what this ended up happening was that we had this tech and it ended up working for both Gravy and for Verdance. And the more that we played this into Verdance, the more successful it was turning out to be. Just having a lot of good pressure, but also pitch stacking and certain disruptive cards. So like Erase Face in second cycle means that they have to give 2 cards, and if anything leaks over, they can't HPOC combo you. And this ended up also including Dread Scythe for 2 reasons. One was that Dread Scythe in second cycle is obviously very good. They always had to give 2 cards if they want to HPOC combo you. But then the other thing was that when you're playing this tempo beatdown style game plan into Verdance, you're always higher on life. So the issue was that the Verdance would be blocking out, trying to set up potions and live long enough to establish the combo. But then you as the Florian player need to convert your 4-card hands. And this deck was really highly tuned to convert 4-card hands. When you look at a lot of this stuff, it's all go again. It's all things that can hit the bin. Like outside of the D-reacts, you are able to basically play out every single 4-card hand with some exceptions. Things like Flourish are just cards that you get to convert immediately for damage on your own turn. But the issue is that like if you draw Fruits and you have Reaping Blade out and you're sitting there with your 4-card hand, normally you could just discard Fruits and then like play the rest of your hand out and you just like keep on maintaining tempo against the Verdants. You couldn't do it with Reaping Blade. But the interesting thing was that playing the Dread Scythe not only worked for your overall game plan, but it meant that you could proactively keep on gaining life, even though you were pressuring the Verdants the whole game. Even in my top 8 match, this was really relevant because I just kept on gaining life when I was just like putting down the beatdown in the first cycle. I'm playing like Arcane Seeds in life, discarding Fruits, sending my whole hand, the Verdants is blocking out, and it's maintaining and establishing my life total even higher, which is pushing me out of the combo range. But then it's also just like converting everything. So Dread Scythe I felt like was actually very, very crucial for how we ended up on this kind of game plan. Scar for Scar is like the odd one out, flexing back and forth between it, but I ended up running 1 copy for the event. I don't really know exactly how I felt about it. I'm still kind of looking for a different card to run in that spot. And then for Syndra, we're on the Erase Face as well. So this doubles up into Verdance and Syndra really well. It kind of depends if the Syndra has fealty. She can kind of play around Erase Face a little bit. The only thing is that she can't buy back the daggers, even if she's able to play her hand kind of successfully. And then Haunting Rendition and Shelter felt like they were kind of important. Haunting Rendition mainly as a 4-block. If they're on Vest, then Haunting Rendition can be very good to like deny, like if you're like soul rating that they're trying to get that 1 resource, then you can deny the resource and like the mask reset. But a lot of the times you're using this as a 4-block, and especially if they're on Tunic. And then Shelter is mainly a 4-block, but once again, it's very contextual, right? You want that flexibility to be able to answer the flick knives or any of the flick effects like throw dagger or anything like that. So that was the overall sideboard. The sideboard is very tuned for Verdance, Gravy, and Syndra, which I think makes a lot of sense. It's mainly what I played at all these pro quests. So week 1, I made top 4 and then top 8. I don't really exactly remember all the matchups, but everything was kind of working smoothly. I think I was running this exact same 80. The only difference was I was running 2 copies of Summer's Fall. I think it came at the cost of like 1 Haunting Rendition and 1 of the Scars. So I was running the Summer's Falls, and I never needed to side them into any single matchup. And I felt like I just wanted more tech to lean into like these top 3 contenders for the meta. For the Pro Quest yesterday, it was really stacked. It was like 40 plus players. Like we had Vancouver come down. So like Yuki and Ellie were both there. I played Ellie in Swiss, so she was on Fi. I put down a lot of the sideboard stuff. If there's a specific matchup you want, just leave a comment and I can go ahead and add it. I just try to pick stuff that I felt like was relevant for the meta. But round 1, we play against Vincent. I think that if you're playing Verdance, it's like very free because they can stack Malefics into you as Florian and you can't do anything. But if you're playing Verdance, you can scour the Malefics. So, but the way to kind of play this matchup, in my opinion at least, is that like you want to posture defensively because like you can just block them out and then they like IP like 3 all the time and basically do nothing and just internally start bleeding. But the deal is that sometimes they'll try to like Rune Gate stack you, which is like how they win the matchup. They don't win the matchup by just playing every single 4-card hand. They have to sculpt these like combo turns, and so you need like some flexibility to pressure their life total on the off turns. So like we have the CMHs and then we have the disruptive cards, of course, but then you also have to have all these 4 blocks. You could potentially cut like 2 of the Tillings for 2 of the Haunting Renditions, just to have some more 4 blocks. I think that's what I did in the matchup. This is just what I had initially, but I think I made like a gut decision to just like add more 4 blocks to the deck. You just kind of posture defensively. The deck implodes at some point. That's basically what happened in the game. Although my opponent was able to like triple Rune Gate me in the mid game with like 4 Malefics on the board. So like they definitely got like the really powerful combo push turn. And I definitely dropped it insanely low, but I was just able to stabilize when some Malefics were gone because the deck kind of has trouble closing out. And then I was mixing in some disruption as well. It just ended in proactive fatigue where like he was low enough that when I was sending damage, he was having to block and then eventually just ran out of cards. In round 2, we play against Rhinar. Rhinar is definitely interesting. The deck actually plays less Intimidate now, from my personal experience, because of the new Super Slam cards. They're playing a lot of the new Disruption, which is obviously much better for the deck, but it does help you out as an Earth hero. But the main difference here is that you do want proactive cards, because if the Rhinar does have a pretty wide Intimidate turn, like if they're going to go like Blood Rush and then like a discard with Go Again, like Wild Ride to start it off, you're already down 2 cards to block with. So you want to make sure that the cards you're keeping are not just like D-Reacts you're going to IP. So I opt for like the CMH and like Rune Ranger package. These are like 3 blocks that ultimately can get converted on offense. So like if your opponent just intimidates out your whole hand, you're able to at least like return the 4-card hand and just play everything back, which is basically what we do. I think the runner like bricks in a couple weird spots. We keep Faceberg for one of the Blood Rush turns. We shut it down pretty easily. And then we just kind of close the game out by just like decomposing really early, being really aggressive with Fellings. Round 3, we play against Fang. Fang, I'm going back and forth on how to play. I don't really think I've landed on a specific way I like to play the matchup, but I will say that the more aggressive you are, I think the better it is. I think the longer the game goes on, the more disadvantaged you are, because the Fang is just getting like insane card rates every single turn by just having the fealty. And so I think that the faster you speed up the clock, the better it is for you, because the Fang is getting like plus like 3 usually every single turn by just not having to pitch with one of their cards, and then also getting Dynamo every single turn. Even though like in the late game you're getting +1 or sometimes +2 on your Florian hero power, I think that the Fang just outclasses you. And so I've noticed that speeding up the clock by just like playing Sea Mages and the Rune Ragers is kind of helping the matchup out a little bit. And then having Erasa is actually really, really good into Fang as well. This is also like a complete time walking card compared to Syndra. We play aggressive. We have to make a tight block in the end game. We face Purg in like the right spot, and we end up winning that match. In round 4, we play against Dory. Dory felt absolutely hopeless, unfortunately. I mean, it was Dawnblade Dory specifically. This is where we get into the part of Florian where your win con is just the fact that they unban Germinate. The way that you can play this matchup is you can basically block with 2 cards every single turn. A lot of the Dory hands usually have trouble pushing over, or if they do, you should always have like a D-React set, and that way, like one of the turns where they have like a pushover with like Iron Song or like Glistening, you're able just to answer with the D-React. But you can get away a lot of the times of just like blocking with 2 cards. Like you should play the Dory matchup a lot. I played the matchup a lot, so when I say I just block with 2 cards, that's not really true, but like a lot of turns, because the Dory can't just be free taking damage every single turn to bluff 4 cards into you. Like she normally is just like blocking 2, playing Warrior's Valor and sending Dawnblade. If you just like play that game with her, you can just take 0 damage basically. I think you could even play this matchup where you literally block with every single hand the entire game and do nothing, and then just like play Germinates in the end game and stack like 50 rune chance and send it and kill them. So that's what we end up doing. We just trade cards in the early game. I think it's like 40 to 20 at some point. And then, because the Dory is just, trying not to take damage, but when you're just like blocking with 2 cards and sending Felling, they have to take damage. And so we take no damage at all the way through first cycle, basically. And then second cycle, we draw like our pitch stack, which just Germinates blues, and then the Everbloom. So we have like 5 copies of Germinate to play. My opponent's at like 20. And so I just start saying no blocks, playing Germinate, saying no blocks, playing Germinate, passing. They get me down to like 15, but that's me saying no blocks for like 4 turns. And so we just like one-shot them with the Rune Chant stack. So you can definitely play the matchup like that. Same deal for Victor. Although Victor, you're just blocking out the entire game and just playing the Germinates. You don't even want to trade with them because of the Clash cards. You just force them to like convert all the Clash cards in their hand to pitch. It's like incredibly embarrassing for that deck. You can just block and do nothing, play your Germinates and win the game. The Pack Perfect thing doesn't work really because you just hedge your life total enough that you can just like say no blocks on the Peck Perfects and then block everything else in the matchup. Round 5, we play Ellie on she brought 5, which is pretty cool. The 5 matchup is definitely pretty interesting. I would probably say it felt a little bit worse than Syndra. Fi having blinks plus like, like the Spreading Flames or Rake turn, I think is like really powerful. And it definitely felt like it had a higher ceiling than like what Syndra can do. Obviously, Fi has kind of always been like a more combo focused ninja. Syndra definitely is more like a better turn-to-turn rate kind of deck. I don't really know exactly. It was only 1 game, and I got hit with like a really explosive Spreading Flames turn by like, I think it was like turn 3 or 4. So I'm not exactly sure where to place it. I didn't really draw any disruption in that game. I think I maybe drew 1 Felling, but didn't draw like any like Erase or any timely CNCs, plows, whatever. I think I even ended up having to block with Faceberg just as a generic like defense just to stop like a mass trigger at the very end that would have just ended up in getting like a double lava burst. So like it's a little bit difficult. I can't really speak too much on it, but I did get blown up. So it definitely feels like it was probably definitely not in my favor. And then round 6, we play into Kasai, and I totally butchered this game. I ended up making a really bad misblock with the Faceberg. It was a turn where they had played like 2 Slice and Dice and sent their Saber. They have a card in hand and a card in arsenal. But I ended up making the wrong decision because I gambled that if I Faceberg and they're only go against sources in hand, I get like, I think this would be like the equivalent of like 8 life out of the Faceberg. But if they have a Go Against source in Arsenal, the card does nothing. They had a Go Against source in hand that they discarded the Faceberg, but they also had one set in Arsenal. So I end up getting insanely blown out. I lose the game by 1 health, just trading damage back and forth, because in the end game, I want to say they were like at 6, and I have a Felling and a blue in my hand, and they sent exactly enough damage that I had to block with the Felling. I have one more set in Arsenal, so I chained 2 Fellings in a row, and I should close the game out at that point. So it was definitely like a really bad block, and like the life loss just like ended up like completely costing me the game. I meant to say this earlier, but I think that the biggest reason why you're probably not winning with Florian is because you're just not Faceberging correctly. And unfortunately, there's really like no spreadsheet I can give you on how to Faceberg. Even the way I play it has been described by other people who are watching my games or people I'm testing with is like very intuitive. And it's weird. It mainly comes with the experience of knowing and playing against a lot of different decks. Like if you play like 20 games into Syndra, or even better yet, you play 20 games of Syndra, you can think about from the other ends, like when would Faceberg actually like blow me out? And you start to recognize a lot of different spots where Faceberg is like actually complete blowout. Sometimes it's a gamble, and usually there's a lot of implied value of just leaving it on the table. Your opponent will take certain lines that are sometimes inefficient because the card exists. It's kind of similar to Striders, where your opponent will kind of play suboptimally to play around the effect, even if you don't have it or weren't intending on using it. But we make a bad block with the Faceberg, costs us the game. So I think it goes to prove my point that the main reason that you're going to win games with Florian is because you Faceberg in the right spot and you kind of just like time walk your opponent. It's kind of similar to Striders in that sense, where like Striders like catches you up a turn. I think that Faceberg can do the same thing, where if you time it correctly, you basically get like an extra turn over your opponent. So we played Verdance in top 8, and like what we talked about, we played this matchup super beat down, very aggressive. Her having non-blocks in the deck, usually up to 7 non-blocks now, with Rampant plus the 4 different healing potions, I think gives you a lot of leeway. What's really interesting is that my opponent plays Millennium Tree on turn 1 and passes. I sent a bunch of damage on my turn 1. I want to say it was like Flourish into like E-Strike for, this would be for 9, set a card and pass. My opponent has the tree out and plays E-Strike with Go Again, holding the 2 cards in hand. And it reads really obviously that it's probably an arcane spell. And also Verdance doesn't have a single 1-card hand that she can really play besides like discarding fruits or whatever. So we immediately off the bat, like on my opponent's second turn, just rip Faceberg, and it ends up, you know, just completely shutting down the turn. I'm able to draw even more proactive cards and just keep the pressure on. So I'm being very, very aggressive the whole time. I'm trading damage as much as I can. If I have a redundant blue, I'll pitch for one of the arcane spells, or in that, like I am pressuring everything face. The goal here is that they need to be blocking with their entire pitch stack. But the game takes a bunch of twists and turns. My opponent ends up having to block with all their arcane spells. So at that point, they're like basically proactively fatigued. The only thing that I need to do is just play around like an end game where they still have 2 rampants left in the deck and they have 2 healing potions that we're able to establish. So I'm mainly just playing around that. I just keep my like life total high enough. It came down to a really interesting block in the end game where I wanted to keep a 2-card hand with Felling. My opponent sent Tilling, and I want to say I was at 12. And I had the ability to block for 6 and send the Felling, and my opponent is sub 10. So this is like really important because it starts ripping my opponent's entire hand. And at that point, I get full tempo just to like pressure with my pitch stack. The cards you definitely want to counter pitch stack are going to be cards like Erase Face. Some of your Go Against sources can be pretty good too. Like Swarming is really good in second cycle. Same goes for like even like E-Strike can be good. You really do want to resolve these early game, but it's totally fine to pitch stack them. Basically what you're trying to do is that you need your opponent to actually have to play a rampant to live. I think that's like the easiest way I would put it, is that your opponent needs to play the rampant that's in their hand to not die. And that's how you win the matchup basically. So it's very interesting, but my opponent sends Tilling, I'm at 12. And I do a full graveyard count, and the only thing left in the deck is 1 copy of Burn Bear. And the Burn Bear plus the Waning Moon puts me dead at 10. Specifically, if they have Rampant, it does kill me, but I'm not playing around that at that point because I think I knew at that stage in the game it just wasn't part of their pitch stack yet. But I do think it might have been in their arsenal. So we end up taking a risk, but basically what happens is that we end up blocking and destroying our Carapace and then blocking 2 extra cards. So that way we go to exactly 11. Because the way that I viewed it was at that point in the game, me having the AB3 didn't really matter anymore. Because once I drop low enough, it doesn't matter. I have to tap out to try to kill my opponent anyway, and I'll just die to the Strider's turn. So that just ensured that I got to send my last felling and basically rip full tempo, and my opponent couldn't kill me with just Burn Bear. It was like a really crazy decision to make, but I was actually like really proud of myself for making that decision, because it ends up like completely like flipping the matchup. My opponent ends up having to actually block the last copy of Burn Bear because we stole all the tempo at that point in the game. And then it comes down to just like playing around like the last final couple cards in the deck, and then trying to pressure enough that they're never able to pop their last 2 like healing potions and play their 2 rampants. So we end up exactly getting there, where we had just enough to force them to lose the rampant from hand and then fully block. And then in top 4, this is the fun part of the story time. We play against Syndra, and it is probably one of the weirdest games I have ever played in Flesh and Blood. So we're put on the play, and I have like just a slew of a bunch of just bad cards in my hand. I just play some stuff to filter things out. I think I play a Plow for 2, and I arsenal a So under. It was just like the easiest blue to put in my arsenal, because it just helps you get to decomp 4 kind of easily, because you can play the So tomorrow, put itself in banish, and then if you have 3 other earth cards left over, then you can just play like Felling, decomp 3 earth, and then it kind of lets you skip having to have that first decomp with Rootbound, which like, this does not matter. This is not a real play line, but like you should know how to like flex the blue cards in your deck. I think that's important for Florian, because you run a lot of them. And so like a niche thing like that, you should know about. So we put this in Arsenal, and then we draw like a 4 red hand with 2 erase face. My opponent gets full tempo going second. I end up completely punting and forgetting which chain link we're on, and I let a mass draw hit, which I've like never done into Syndra. To be fair, this ProQuest started at like 2 in the afternoon, so I think at this point it's like past 10. I end up letting a mass draw hit for no reason, totally could have stopped it. And then we end up on our turn with the 2 copies of Erase Face, and I decided to make the weirdest gamble of my entire life and pitch one of the Erase Faces to play the So tomorrow, to gamble that I'm going to draw a blue, because like statistically I should. Like I just hit 5 reds in a row. And if I hit the blue, then I'm able to descend the Erase Face, and I basically get to bail myself out of having that 2 red hand. We draw an E-Strike, which is like kind of interesting, because it at least lets us play the 2 card hands. And then I end up making the decision to pick the draw card function, because at this point I feel like I'm like way behind in the game, and the only way I win is if I hit like a relevant card that's worth more than the +2. And we end up hitting Sink Below off the top. So like the decision paid off. I don't really know if I always would have taken that risk, but I just felt like based off of the way the game was going, I'm like, okay, I just need to like get a little bit of variance to go my way. So we hit the sink, and then this proceeds to be one of the weirdest turns I think I've ever had playing this deck. I drop my next hand, and it is Felling, Shelter, and then 2 copies of Rootbound, red specifically. And so my opponent sends in their first attack. My opponent bricks, by the way, and just like has to pitch a whole card to send like Dagger. And then I'm sitting there thinking if I need to play Sink Below on the Dagger attack, because I have 4 D-Reacts between my hand and my arsenal. I have 4 D-Reacts, and I want to sink because I need to find a blue. Because the thing is, I have enough earth cards. Thanks to playing the So tomorrow, I'm able to play the Felling immediately for 8 if I draw blue off the sink. So I ended up not doing the Dagger, but the next attack I sink, and then I sink my Shelter, and I draw my final copy of Red Carapace. So I'm sitting there with 3 Red Carapace in my hand and a Felling. I really cannot explain to you just like how like insane that felt, because like I've been practicing so much and going to these pro quests, and you know, and like just barely missing it in the top cut. And then I'm like here again in top 4, and I'm like, you are kidding. Like there is no way I just drew this hand. But my opponent was just completely breaking on their turn. So it was just neither of us were able to do anything. So I ended up just blocking for 3 with like 3 red Rootbounds. I don't have enough earth cards to like decompose any of them. So I'm just treating them just like red 3 blocks. And I arsenal my Felling, and my opponent like bricks again. And then like this time though I have the blue, and so I'm able to like block and then send the Felling, and then I decomp like all my like Rootbounds away over the next like couple turns, and we end up like actually going online like kind of fast. So it's just bizarre early game where like neither of us are doing anything. My deck is just like imploding. But the thing is, Felling just carries you. Felling just carries this deck. Like the thing is that like as dumb as that was drawing all 3 copies of like Carapace, that's so much better than drawing all 3 copies of Felling. Because like if I draw all 3 copies of Felling, I have to block with them. I think I actually just lose that game straight up. But like felling is what wins you like all of your matchups. So we end up just like shaking the bad variants off, just like playing as tight as I can, like not letting mask ever hit again, and just playing like grinding out with the fellings. I don't remember exactly all the details of the match, but it really did come down to in the end game, I like had to math out how to start ripping my opponent's Spellvoid Dagger and then put them on not enough cards to be able to start rebuying it back. Because it just lets you like catch up the end game way faster if she's not able just to Spellvoid Dagger back every single turn. So we took a line where we sent Rune Chants in addition to felling in a way that my opponent can only keep a 2-card hand at the very like least. Like they could go to like basically like 2 and keep like a 2-card hand, which I felt like would just win me the matchup. So we took the damage to do it, just because I knew that not being able to rebuy back the dagger means that just like activating Grasp or drawing Arcade Seeds in life just like locks up the game immediately, on addition to like me playing felling and my opponent being down 2 cards. So we end up taking the line and then we draw like Arcane Seeds and then we just like close the game out. So it's definitely like a very interesting matchup. It mainly comes down to if you're able to draw your disruption, if your center opponent like bricks it all, and then kind of just like knowing how to play towards your end game really tightly, I think helps a lot. And then holding on to like well-grounded as long as you can, I think is also really important for the deck. You just need to be able to like play around some of the late game flick effects. That was the overall event, because in the finals we ended up splitting. My opponent wasn't interested in going to Japan. I was interested in going to Japan, even though I just got laid off from work. So maybe not the greatest financial decision, but we're going to try to make it work. So I'm very excited to go compete in the Pro Tour. I will hopefully be there next year. And overall, this was like really fun. I had a really good time at this event. Like the vibes are always good up here in the Pacific Northwest. It's always really fun playing with everyone. And overall, I was like really happy with the deck. I think I put a lot of practice in and it paid off. I feel like I understand the deck really well. I don't really know if I'll continue to play this going forward. Like I said, it felt correct for the ProQuest season. It may still end up being correct for like a larger event. We may run it for like maybe the Calling Seattle. I guess we'll do another testing run and see how things are feeling. It's overall what I played. So maybe this was helpful if you've been, wanting to play Florian or trying to figure out what you want to do for the deck. If you have any questions, ask in the comments. I can definitely clarify some things, because I'm mainly talking like really broadly, because I've just been playing like tons of hours of this deck. So I'm kind of compartmentalizing a lot of stuff. But until next time, thank you for watching.